The story begins with a pair of siblings, ready to leave, when a crazy hunter appears and in the blink of an eye eliminates the guy. But surprise, the boy zeroes his life and comes back, as if nothing had happened. The hunter, of course, is there only testing the siblings' regeneration powers, and in this way the macabre cycle begins. He continues killing the two several times, as if it were a video game. This gives him farm to gain points and level up for a change. This sadistic game goes on for years, since the guy is no genius and decides to kidnap the siblings, throwing them into a basement. But look, he is not the only one taking advantage of the fragility of the situation. He even forms a guild with the 5 most powerful hunters. Together they turn the siblings into their scapegoats, evolving to become the very famous Rank S hunters. Each one has their tactic, and things are ugly. Some even go beyond death to climb up. And the siblings, poor things, are immortal and have to experience all of this repeatedly, reliving the pain as if their lives were a tragic novel that never ends. One fine day, the hunters, so confident, leave the basement, thinking the siblings are too weak to move. On that day, those hunters needed to travel to a distant place for work. Since they were the renowned most powerful hunters who had defeated the S-rank demon, however, one of them remained behind because he wanted to gain a few more levels using the siblings. But they did not count that in the moment of suffocation, the brother was still stuck to the ground, and the sister, poor thing lost in her emotions, had her heart shattered after what those people did to her. She has a completely crazy idea. Destroying and regenerating herself could help her feel better. So, in a desperate act to free the brother, she cuts the parts that hold him and bam, a strike to his heart, and wow, she evolves. Who would say that the path of strength passed through this bloody road? Her gaze fills with malice. They needed revenge, and if that meant repeating the same mistake, there was no problem. She was willing to do anything. The brother, realizing what she wanted, just sent, "Go there, do it now." And so, in that dreadful place, they killed themselves thousands of times. Seriously, almost 1,000,000. In this macabre dance, the two reached an impressive level. When the hunter, all excited, went down into the basement, little did he know what awaited him. Seeing the siblings evolving together, he almost had a stroke. "Only I can do this," he shouted, but it was already too late. As soon as they regenerated, their bodies were fierce. The look of victims was gone. Now they looked like wolves ready to attack. The hunter, terrified, stepped back a little, but did not give up. After all, he was rank S, the jewel of the country, right? He released his magical beast to enter the fight. The boy had already seen this before, was calm and went there to push the sister to one side. "Keep an eye on what we have become," he sent with a coldness of someone who is no longer afraid of anything. Not even the intimidating stare of a dragon could scare him. Even though the girl was stronger now, she was still afraid after everything they had done to her. Therefore, her brother guarded her like a knight. The battle between a rank S hunter and the newly strengthened immortals was brutal. Strength and experience were not enough to match the levels of a fight like this. After draining the guy to the last drop, the brother let out, "You will pay dearly for all of this." Time passed, and the brother began to destroy and regenerate the body of the rank S warrior repeatedly, making him feel the agony they endured for years. When the other hunters returned, they found a guild member tied up, destroyed and suffering, hanging from the ceiling of the basement. He was still alive, but not even healing magic could save him. Then the leader cut him in half to end his suffering. Kang became furious, but Haruto, with the calm of someone who has already seen everything, explained that they had no way to save him, and that this was a way to end the agony. Now the focus was revenge, the answer for everything the two had gone through. Meanwhile, Shin and Minori were fleeing through the forest at night. The younger sister, already without strength, and with the pain burning in her legs, could not endure anymore. They decided to take a break and stop to rest, and the realization that they had finally escaped hit. Shin, all protective, began to caress Minori's hair. After so much suffering, he made the solemn promise that he would protect her at all costs. Suddenly, the girl collapses into the brother's arms, who already knew the poor thing was exhausted. He decides to stay awake because, well, who knows when the guild decides to appear to hunt him again. But of course, the sleepiness starts coming, and he is there fighting against the fatigue, without having any idea that dozing off is not an option. Then, in a moment of pure adrenaline, Shin spots two silhouettes running through the forest and wakes up with a fright. That familiar feeling of evil in the air, as well as the beautiful moments of torture he lived. He thinks Minori is safe, so he takes off running after the bastards. He follows the trail of the cruel sensation until a little house in the middle of the woods, thinking that soon they will notice that he is not out for a walk. Then, out of nowhere, a guy appears from the shadows and bam, stabs Shin in the neck. Then a group of strangers appears, emerging among the branches as if they were frogs jumping in the mud. He wonders who those crazy guys are, since he has never seen them before. The guys surround him as if they had been waiting for this moment. They know he is the guy they were looking for, but they also remember there is a woman to catch, 500 million just to kidnap her. In their heads, everything is too easy. A mage from the group, who must have watched many action movies, casts a strength spell on the companions, filling them with cleverness. And then, excited with his new power, the first of them rushes at Shin, thinking the job is a piece of cake, and pow! He knocks the young man to the ground, who even seems to break all the bones. But no, the guy just snaps his neck back into place, and the crowd goes into shock because he should not be alive anymore. He wonders if they are subordinates of the guild, but seeing that no one answers, he decides it is not worth knowing. Then he disappears and reappears to give that beating to the enemies, catching one by surprise with a well-placed punch in the stomach. Anyone who comes with a malicious vibe, no matter who, will be his enemy. Two men attack and manage to rip off his arm. But look! Shin grabs his own severed limb and throws it in the face of one, with a punch that must have been inexplicable. After knocking down 3 guys, he realizes that only the mage with the staff remains. The woman is there, terrified by the young man's strength. She casts a purple light spell, and boom! The magical beam hits Shin right on target. But to her surprise, he does not even have a scratch. Not believing it, the mage tries again, firing more purple rays, but he simply stands up, not caring about the damage. At the moment she tries to get out of there, he cuts her path. Shin runs after her, and after hanging the enemies on the trees, plays it smart and steals the clothes of one of them. He decided not to take their lives, so he ran back to take care of his sister. He apologizes for having woken her up. Minori then asks where he got those clothes from. He makes up that it was from a kind stranger, and makes his sister smile. And look at that, he even got new clothes for her, which makes her all excited. After changing clothes, they continue along the dirt road. The immortal siblings continue their journey in search of freedom. Shin believes that, if they go farther, the guild will not find them. They decide to rest under a waterfall, lighting a fire hidden behind the fall of water. He brought food for both of them, and, this way they recover their strength. The crazy guy managed to take weapons and rations from the mercenaries, but he could not discover anything useful with that. Shin tells Minori that he will go to the tower to gather information and get supplies, asking her to hide. When he arrives in the city, he is impressed with the technology there. He sells a piece of equipment and makes good money, managing to buy several supplies. With the money, he finally manages to feed his sister. Then he keeps thinking about what to do next. After all, Abe was the weakest of the group, and the others are monsters in human form. He needs to discover their weaknesses to send them all to hell. In the sky, an airship flying invades his mind with a piece of news that the rank S hunter Abe 2 had died. Kira was there, speaking live, and the bomb drops. His friend, who always helped, was tortured and executed in a brutal way. The guy sends a message: they would never forgive whoever took the life of someone so precious. Finally, he shows the faces of Kiryu, Shin, and Minori on the broadcast, raising the indignation of the public. That is when Shin realizes that his old gang had been hired to kidnap them. During the broadcast, Haruto sends one directly to Shin, warning that he will pay for everything and that hiding is useless, because soon they would fall into his net. The news causes a real frenzy in the crowd, which is now thirsty for revenge, wanting to see the siblings eliminated to avenge Abe. And the last line of action that keeps echoing in Shin's mind is that they would not forgive the criminals who killed their hero. Shin, with his sharp instinct, realized that Kira was hiding some dirty secrets, and felt that he had to pull him to the dark side of the Force. The scene drifts back to the past, a few days before the Kiryu siblings managed to hit the escape button. Kang, all nervous, punches a guy because the man did not bring anything useful, calling him a huge useless fool. Meanwhile, Seiya was freaking out, thinking about what happened with the Kiryu siblings and how this could come to light. Then Haruto, that calm suicidal guy, calms things down, saying that he would make the whole world see the two as monsters to disguise the mess they had caused. The crazy guy knew that no one would look kindly at fugitives who had a price of 500 million on their heads. Kang, possessed by fury, thought that this was a plan to let the guys live after what they did to Taru. With anger, he said that he would never be able to forgive them for the torture of his comrade, Abe. He wanted to know where the manliness was to hunt the guys and not only capture them, but show them the hell they had never seen. He understood the state of his friend, but observed that Taru was the weak one of the group, and that was why he had been the target. Full of hatred, Kang tried to punch the mage for speaking badly of the fallen little friend, but a spell appears and ties his arm, holding the attack. She, very calm, told him to relax, saying that she did not think the siblings were a real threat. But for Kang, the matter was about revenge, not fear. The confusion ends when Kira arrives with a message printed in Taru's blood. It said that they would eliminate everyone, which meant that the siblings still had the two as targets. Haruto asked them not to panic, because soon curious people would appear. The world was on their side since the images, the faces, and the reward had been spread everywhere. Probably, information about the two would soon leak out. When Kang tried to argue, Haruto cut him off and stated that freaking out is useless, because they are world famous. They needed to prepare to face the Lords of Hell and take some time to rest, since the exhaustion was real. But Kang, full of resentment, could not relax. He was willing to find and finish off the siblings. Meanwhile, at the waterfall, the two siblings enjoying the tranquility together. Minori had slept like a rock, thanks to the illusion magic that left her chill, unaware of any danger. After a good rest, it was time to move, because staying in the same place is an invitation for trouble. Shin warns Minori that now they were students of crime, their faces so known in all the cities, they had to be careful. Then, he had an idea and suggested that they use masks to give a disguise, even if that made vision difficult. The Kiru siblings put on the masks and realized they were fine, even if they bumped into enemies. As they leave, Minori asks Shin if they had a place in mind, and the brother confirms that he already had everything planned. They were heading to a dungeon, a short realm compared to the real world, closed behind a gate where the normal rules did not apply. It was an area where common people could not set foot. The terrain in the dungeon was a mess to cross, but perfect to hide. According to the guide that Shin had bought in the city, there was a toxic swamp on the top of the mountain. With the fame of being treacherous, hunters normally avoided there, making it the ideal base. Soon they find the mystical portal of the place. No matter what happened, they were together always. Hand in hand, they jumped into the portal. Upon arriving, the sight of the swamp came out of a nightmare. It really seemed lethal, but it was a place where no one else could enter because of the poison. They decided not to relax. A hunter could have a potion to immunize himself and try to catch the two. At that instant, Shin stepped on a plant trap that almost messed with his sanity. Then he warns Minori that if she touches the vines, seeds will be fired because the place was infested with traps. As soon as the sister understood that they could not lower their guard, she pointed ahead. They came across a giant white wolf and a huge black wolf, and the siblings were somewhat terrified. He comforts Minori, saying that she did not need to worry because he would handle this, and he starts running, going to meet the beasts, and jumps on the wolf's back, delivering a powerful punch that destroys the black wolf. However, the white one reacts and devours half of his body with a bite. Minori was paralyzed for a moment, but soon the magic activated and she recovered quickly, even trembling with fear. As a dungeon monster, the speed and strength of the wolf were at an absurd level, even greater than that of Abe Tiru's chimera. Minori cast a defensive spell to protect her brother. An enchantment made Shin's severed arms and legs move on their own, attacking the monster. The hands that flew forced the wolf's mouth to open, revealing the sharp teeth. As soon as the mouth opened fully, he took the chance to charge against the creature and, in the end, finished this fight. Smashed and sweating like a pig, Shin was visibly tired. He thought that the skill he used to finish the wolf was there because of Minori's spell. He saw red rays shining through the body and commented how that had been useful for his victory. Meanwhile, in a very different scenario, 1 month after the siblings had escaped, Kang picked up a huge stone and while his henchmen fought against some creatures, decided to go for it. He threw the stone with all his strength, dispatching the blue wyverns on the spot. Then he rushed at another one, ripping the beast's wing and still gaining a level up in the process. As could not be otherwise, Kang did all of this with impressive ease. Later, in a cave where they were eating, he wondered where the siblings would be. His men told him to calm down, since there was a rumor going around that all the hunters were hunting the two because of a reward, and one of the subordinates dropped something a little more important. He heard from a friend that the boy was now wearing a mask. The so-called friend, who had gone to clear the poisonous dungeon, saw Kiryu-shin defeat a poisonous snake with his bare hands. And look, that snake is not just anything. It is a level A monster, whose venom can knock down an elephant. No one there could believe that a human had done that. For Kang, it was kind of strange to think that there was a fighter so strong of whom he knew nothing. The fact that a guy had dispatched a level A snake with his bare hands left Kang super curious to meet this masked man. The subordinate said that the case had happened 3 days earlier and that the boy should still be in the dungeon. Knowing that the area was risky, one of the guys tried to argue with Kang, but ended up taking a punch. Soon, Kang announced that they would go straight to the poisonous swamp. He was excited to meet the masked guy. Meanwhile, back in the dungeon, our protagonist felt that something was in the air. Haunted, he climbed a tree to take a look at the portal, feeling a presence approaching that he was sure was Kang. When he was preparing to leave and meet him, Minori begged him not to do that, but our hero asked her to stay calm, saying that now they were also stronger. It was the great chance to take revenge on the brute. He told his sister not to worry so much, assuring that everything would be fine, since he was immortal. Even so, Minori advised him to be careful, reminding that despite his immortality, Kang was stronger than Abe. She then activated her enchantment to give an upgrade to her brother's strength, who ran off. He moved silently between the trees, activating a spell to amplify his vision, and finally found his target, Kang. He was at the entrance of the swamp, clearly waiting for him. When he saw a poisonous boar nearby, the protagonist decided to use it as bait. He cut his finger with a knife and cast an illusion and hypnosis spell on the creature. Then he ordered the boar to run toward a horde of other poisonous boars, attracting them to his trap. Upon seeing the herd of boars running toward them, Kang and his henchmen thought it was a perfect warm-up. He ordered his men to stop trembling and attack the beasts. While beating the animals, Kang shouted for more, thinking the fight was easy. After finishing all the boars, he commented about the ease of the job. However, his henchmen were begging for help, but Kang ignored them. One of the guys started to feel sick, almost fainting, before vomiting blood. Soon, his skin and the others began to melt, and everyone was coughing rivers of blood. Kang, with the smell of poison in the air, finally caught the vibe of what was going on. He knew that the poisonous boars did not release that kind of toxin when they died. He wondered what was happening, and at that moment, the protagonist appeared behind him. He started an attack, but Kang dodged without effort. When he turned around, Kang saw the masked man and realized that the rumors about him were true. The hero advanced and managed to wound Kang's hand with the knife. Even with the blade stuck in his hand, he retaliated with a powerful punch. The protagonist was thrown back, feeling all the force of the impact. Kang's movements confirmed what everyone said about his strength. Kang pulled the knife from the masked man's hand and commented that he had identified with him. He explained that he admired the strong and felt disgust for the weak. His henchmen died because of weakness. Thinking that the masked man had potential, he invited him to join his group, promising money, honor, and women if he became his subordinate under the banner of Byakuren. Everything would be his. Then Kang asked if the proposal seemed attractive. The guy there repeated the usual hysteria. He res the strong and does not miss the chance to mock the weak. But look, who he brought to the swamp thinking they were beasts was completely mistaken. Those guys were in fact a real embarrassment. He got so pissed that he almost regretted not putting them into a beating during training. Meanwhile, the protagonist, who is not foolish at all, remembered the torture he endured and sent a sharp question. Why did the crazy guy have fun tormenting people who had no chance? The answer? Well, because I find it hilarious. And so here he comes, all full of himself, telling how when he punches the weak, the show is always the same. They start begging, with their faces all distorted with fear. The laughter that this brings to his little face is priceless. This talk left our hero furious. And of course, on impulse, he went at him, delivering a punch to the guy. Kang in turn praised the protagonist's boldness, but he was only warming up. He soon prepared to deliver a powerful strike, but the clever Shin dodged to the side, and with agility, drove his dagger into the villain's arm. Kang did not want to leave any witness alive, but he looked, and saw that Shin was not just another in the crowd. He was strong. Our protagonist had already realized that Kang was a real monster, and now he was about to see his real power. His face, overflowing with hatred, was almost poetic, and bam! A devastating punch hit Shin right on target, sending him on a great journey through the air. After flying, Shin had one certainty: that was probably the heaviest blow he had ever taken. What he felt was a mix of respect and fear for Kang. Kang approached and in a mocking tone, questioned if Shin had endured the impact. The revelation? The big guy was only using 30% of his total strength. That left Shin shocked. How could it be that the guy had not gone all out? Kang challenged Shin to do whatever he wanted, presenting his weapons, just to see what the masked man was capable of. Shin rushed forward with all courage and delivered a strike, but his knife shattered on Kang's body. And with that sarcastic smile, Kang jabbed, saying that not even with all the strength a dull knife like that would cause a scratch. Shin did not give up, and responded with a rain of punches. It was the first time someone dared to challenge him like that, even after witnessing his power. That left Kang even more curious. He was so excited that he returned with a kick that launched Shin far away again. Kang, all satisfied, decided to throw Shin to the ground, but the big guy was disappointed. He had placed expectations on this fight and now thought his opponent was down for the count. However, a stroll through the poison zone caught Kang's attention. A knife stuck into his shoulder. Impossible! How had Shin not been affected by the poison? He called him inhuman, but something itched in Kang's mind, and he rushed with everything toward the masked man. He tried to grab our hero, but Shin dodged. Kang was so pissed that he wielded a punch charged with magic and struck it against the ground. A devastating explosion shattered the terrain, throwing Shin far away. The effect left a giant crater and knocked off Shin's mask. Kang, upon seeing his face, let out an insane laugh. He finally recognized that was the immortal he had been searching for so much. In a twist, Kang was in shock when he realized that the masked man was Kiryu Makoto Shin, and that Shin's endurance ability came from his regeneration. Kang became desperate. He was after revenge for Taru's death, and there was no longer any way to make Shin an ally. Full of fury, he proclaimed that he would not let him escape, to which Shin replied that it went far beyond eliminating him. The two stared at each other, and Kang rushed with full force, throwing stones. One of the projectiles hit Shin and tore off his arm. With a kick, Kang shouted that this time the immortal would not escape. The impact of the kick widened the crater even more, and seriously, Shin did not shake and ran toward Kang. Proving that he was there to stay, he delivered a punch to the big guy's face. Kang did not even move, but soon retaliated, asking if that was all Shin had to show. As an example of what a real punch is, he delivered a devastating blow, making Shin collapse into a pile of stone, spitting blood. There, he realized that he was trembling after the frightening impact. Kang laughed like a lunatic, because the terror was stamped on the boy's face, and unable to endure it anymore, our hero took off in flight when he saw the malice in Kang's eyes. He knew very well the fear he had felt during the torture. Makoto threw himself into a desperate run, while the giant followed him in an unsettling calm. The immortal, in a moment of pure rage, shouted, and his severed arm, which was lying on the ground, shot toward the poor boy. Without even needing to look, the villain destroys the arm and the magic, sensing that Shin was trying some trick. With all his ego, the enemy boasts that nothing so insignificant could defeat him. Soon after, in a movement of pure arrogance, he delivered an enormous kick to the poor guy's stomach. Stepping on his head, the giant wonders how the boy had become so strong so fast. And it does not stop there. He even warns that he will keep breaking the boy until an answer is given. And by Shin's little face, Kang realized that Minori must be nearby, and states that, after finishing Shin, he will go after the sister, already thinking about how much she could also be fun. Our hero was about to explode with rage, but there was nothing he could do besides take punches to the head, a real brutality. Finally, the giant slams his foot on the ground, like an iron ball, crushing Makoto's little head, planning of course to crumple him before his regeneration has a chance. But, out of nowhere, in the next instant, the protagonist simply evaporated from the ground and appeared behind Kang, with red and black lightning dancing around his body. His regeneration was accelerated, faster than at any other moment. In the blink of an eye, Shin disappears and reappears in front of his enemy, preparing for a huge punch. The impact of the two fists generated an impressive shockwave, releasing a devastating amount of energy. Kang, who now realized that the boy was more agile, still judged him powerless, thinking that he already dominated the situation. With a rain of punches, he attacks more than Shin could endure, questioning if his regeneration was failing. One punch, and Shin's arm explodes, making the boy writhe in pain. The villain wonders how long that fragile defense would resist. Another kick, and there goes another arm of the protagonist. Kang provokes, saying that he is only defending himself and calling Shin incompetent. When the young man sketches a little smile, Kang understands nothing and asks the reason. And then Shin, with what seems to be a brilliant idea, reveals that Kang's little green brainless head was a great advantage. The boy realizes that his severed limbs were all illuminated with that red and black energy, and suddenly orders that all the body parts begin to attack. The arms, which were only pieces thrown around, rush toward the villain, who, half laughing, says that he is not shaken by such weak attacks. But, surprise of surprises, he begins to defend and counterattack the fists, realizing that the strength of the blows was not negligible at all. He wonders how that boy, who was trembling with fear, was now performing so well. And it is true, our hero was still with a mixture of fear and determination, something powerful that was taking over him. Finally, in an explosion of fury, he prepares a spectacular punch with what remained of his arm, wrapped in magical electricity, and boom, he landed the blow, destroying Kang's arm, and leaving him speechless. Shin, all bold, challenges the villain to a contest of strength. Kang, enraged, promises to turn the immortal into a punching bag, and so he advances like a bull, certain that he will tear the boy apart and end any hope of regeneration that still remained. And while all this happens, our protagonist has a brilliant idea, to unite all the severed arms into one. The result? A giant arm, worthy of leaving anyone open-mouthed, which then delivers a devastating punch. The impact of that blow wrecks Kang, throwing him far away as if he were a rag doll. Shin shouts, "How does it feel to lose in a competition of strength?" and tells the truth. All the fear and hatred the siblings felt would now be engraved forever in that body. And 1 week after the clash with Kang, our heroes are at the guild base. Kira, with curiosity on edge, asks Seiya if the preparations to throw everything onto the next Demon King are in full swing. Seiya guarantees that yes, and that they will strive to the maximum for the cause of Abi Tarao. Haruto for a moment seemed to have forgotten the existence of Taru. Then Seiya found that a little strange. After an awkward tension, Kira lightens it, saying that he was only joking and that yes, he remembers Abe. After that tense moment, Seiya notices that Kang was out of sight. Kira laments, mentioning that he was looking for the siblings and remembering that they were great punching bags. Reassuring the swordsman, he says that Kang will soon appear with them. At that, an uneasiness takes hold of Seiya, who, thoughtful, promises to train the siblings thoroughly when they return. Suddenly, a running employee appears with hot news for the brave heroes. He declares that an extremely peculiar package has arrived for them. Seiya and Kira, already on alert, run to check what it is about. The mood changes quickly, and Seiya, serious, suggests that they themselves should check what is wrong. And then, he comes across parts of Kang's body, recognizing the tattoo. The certainty hits like a punch in the stomach. Everyone knows it is Kang's arm, and everyone becomes deeply disturbed. Seiya, doing his little spells, confirmed that the body parts were not false at all, but truly real. They were parts of Kang, the big guy. The man was in shock, struggling mentally, wondering who in their right mind could have taken down that brute. He looked at the cruel cuts, realizing that the parts had been sent as a macabre gift, and soon reached the conclusion that this could only have been the work of someone full of hatred. As Kang had been searching for the siblings, suspicion fell on them, but Seiya could not swallow the idea that those two had enough power to defeat the monster. Kira, who never misses an opportunity to drop a teaser, commented that he already had his doubts when Taru, the weakest of the group, went down. And even though Taru was still stronger than most hunters, Kang was at the level of one of the strongest in the world, and now one of the strongest was out of combat. With that, Kira was convinced the siblings were much stronger than they should be. The swordsman, outraged, wondered how those two had managed to grow so much in so little time. Haruto, always curious, fired the question that everyone wanted to know. How did they become so powerful like that? Seiya then began to explain that in fact, the formula for success was simple. They went through a true festival of deaths, eliminating each other several times to level up. Kira added that by crushing someone of a higher level, the experience points came in high. Unfortunately, all this only left Seiya and Kira with a nagging doubt, a mixture of pity for Kang and concern about what to do next. The siblings' Machiavellian plan to take revenge on the Byakuran guild was underway. Seiya then cast a spell to stabilize Seiya's mind a little, because the guy needed some time to breathe. Grateful, while Haruto asked for a few minutes to be alone, he took some time to reflect. When Haruto was alone, he picked up the severed arm of his former companion, as if it were a war trophy, and not impressed at all. That was nothing that afflicted him, and if they thought that this would be enough to take revenge, poor things. And what the siblings had done with Kang was an impressive plan. Stepping on the eye of the deceased colleague, he called the siblings idiots. But oh, the eye was Makoto Shin's, who was spying on everything through that eye. Now that it was destroyed, he lost the connection and decided that he needed more information about the enemy base. Worried about Minori, he decided to go back to take care of her. After all, the girl was waiting for him in front of the guild base. Sending that little package was a great excuse to stop by the city, since the dungeon food was not that great. Besides that, his clothes were a show of recovery spell, so even if a tear or dirt appeared, they fixed themselves, which was very practical. While returning to the dungeon, jumping from building to building, he noticed something strange. Armed hunters were chasing someone, and wasn't it that the one being chased was a girl? He stopped, thinking that it was better not to get involved, since that area was controlled by Bakurin. At that very moment, the hunters surrounded the girl, thinking they had her in their hands, but when he saw that she stopped running, the protagonist realized that he could not ignore the situation. He jumped from the building, and in the blink of an eye, went all out on the hunters, punching hard before they could open their mouths. Knowing that there must be a reason behind that attack, he shouted for the girl to run away, recognizing her and wondering what the hell she was doing there. Meanwhile, Minori, sitting on a tree branch, waited anxiously for her brother until he finally returned and she questioned what was wrong. Upon seeing the strange hooded girl in his arms, her curiosity increased. Asking who the woman was, the protagonist told her to look at the person's face. Upon doing that, Minori was in shock, realizing that the woman was in fact a copy of herself. And so Ishiki Seiya was there, the commander of the Byakuren Guild, and an S-rank swordsman, a true icon in the world of swords, loved by all. But, as always, behind appearances, few knew his dark side. Once, while he was in a bathtub surrounded by girls, one of them spilled wine in the water, and that made Seiya snap, leading him to eliminate the girl for such a trivial reason. In the past, upon seeing Minori chained, he had called her the best, thinking that she was a prize, and regardless of how much he enjoyed breaking her, she always rose again. He made sure to prove his point, since torture was his favorite form of entertainment, and Shin was not liking his game. Seiya thought torturing men was boring, and preferred to attack and play with women. He violated her in front of the brother, demanding that she scream even louder. After completing his abominable act, he walked to the base elevator and ran into Kira and Taru chatting. He noticed that the two entered a room that should be restricted only to Haruto. Seiya tried to take a peek through the door, but Kira caught him and stopped his plans. The swordsman apologized, claiming that he was only investigating that suspicious meeting. Kira stated that he was only throwing something away, and asked if Seiya wanted to take a look at the mess. Curious, the swordsman decided to enter, and to his astonishment, came across several tubes, all housing clones of Minori. Haruto explained that he had asked to create several clones of Minori Kiru. The plan was to produce them en masse with the power of Nu, aiming for a faster evolution. They adapted the resources of Byakuren and the technology of Tiru to manufacture them, but the project failed miserably. The regeneration capacity of those clones was limited. After being defeated 10 times, a clone would no longer recover. And as if that were not enough, those clones did not grant experience points when eliminated. Even with attempts of improvement, Taru considered the mission very difficult, and in the end, they decided to get rid of all of them. Seiya asked if they were really throwing them all away. Taru replied that he had a small trick. He intended to take advantage of the clones to the maximum before discarding them, but showed himself dissatisfied, since they were not real. In a perverse way, the greatest swordsman in the world asked that they give all the clones to him. Taru argued that they were useless, because they had no emotions or consciousness, only efficient dolls that obeyed orders. For Seiya, that was perfect. Abi, observing the scene, found his enthusiasm with those dolls strange, but Seiya clarified that it was not about liking dolls, but about Minori Kiru. He loved her and aimed to play with her in all the most macabre ways possible. In his distorted mind, all rights over her were only his. Kira commented that Seiya was not in love, but rather dependent. Meanwhile, Haruto did not hesitate to call him the worst scum someone could imagine. Back in the present, the clone and the real Minori finally met, both in a state of shock. Upon seeing the scene, the protagonist asked if his sister was okay. The clone revealed that there were more than a dozen other smaller clones being used by Ishiki. She explained that although they were considered devoid of emotions, in fact they had feelings. The clone could not explain why, but everything changed when accidentally she saw the face of the real Minori on TV. A warm sensation sprouted inside her. At the same time, she realized that all the hatred and resentment she felt were directed at Ishiki Seiya. As soon as she understood that emotion, she fled from the mansion. She told the siblings that there were others like her in the mansion, and asked for help to save them. And with a cunning thought, the protagonist had the idea of using the clones to eliminate Seiya. The girl did not understand how that would work, and he clarified that since Ishiki was not aware that the clones had emotions, he would probably be off guard near them. They could use that strategy to defeat him. However, Minori asked what would happen if he discovered the plan. When he replied that, in the worst case, everyone would be eliminated, the sister's anger exploded. She delivered a slap on Shin Makoto's face, arguing that those girls did not ask to be born, and now that they were alive, they should not be manipulated or abandoned to die. Those clones were created from her cells, and were like sisters to her. If her sisters were crying for help, it was natural that she wanted to save them. She challenged the protagonist, questioning whether sacrificing everyone for the sake of revenge really was the best thing to do. The hero felt a weight on his conscience, realizing that this would make him equal to the monsters of Bakuren. The clone then declared that she would save all the others. To try to redeem himself, the protagonist promised that he would eliminate Ishiki Seiya with his own hands for treating his sisters like dirt. He apologized for having scared the sister and together went to the mansion to save them. And so the two siblings crossed the portal and emerged from the forest, heading toward the mansion. Meanwhile, Seiya punished one of the clones, furious that another identical to Minori, who supposedly had no mind, had managed to escape. He vented his anger on the others, blaming them for not having prevented the escape. After that, he ordered them to hunt the fugitive and bring her back, an order that was accepted immediately. The clones of Minori spread through the streets of the city, hunting a hooded figure. The pursuit continued until the hooded girl, tripping over a box, lost speed. Soon the clones seized the chance and attacked her, immobilizing her on the ground. They signaled that they had found and captured the target and that they were returning. From the top of a building, our protagonist and his sister watched the scene of the capture as if it were a bad horror movie. And he, with that sly little smile, said that, as expected, the clones had fallen for the staged escape trick. Everything was following the script. Confident, he offered one of his ears to Minori. After all, reason and planning had always been his strength, while she drew an X on the face in a very creative way, like bait. With the listening ability, he could snoop on everything that was happening inside the mansion just through the ear he delivered. If something went wrong, he was ready to be the savior of the homeland. The clones, now at Ishiki's mansion, which by the way was much bigger than what he had imagined, arrived knocking on the door and announcing the capture of the supposed fugitive. Seiya, the one who thought he was the king of the place, soon went straight to the point. He wanted to understand why number 10 had made one of her Titanic-style escapes. And here comes Minori, with the most pitiful face possible, apologizing and inventing a story about having chased a mysterious shadow, as if that would convince anyone. But Seiya, with the kindness of an orc, made it clear that if she did that again, she would be discarded like trash. And right at that moment, Haruto decided to summon Seiya to a remote meeting, as if that were the last cookie in the package, telling him to get rid of Minori before returning. The clones obeyed the order straight from the Matrix, and our hero heard everything through his magic spell. Minori, the poor thing, was dragged to what would be her end. At the center of everything, the sight was enough to give nightmares, several bodies of other clones fallen across the floor. The girl was so terrified that of course she began to cry in a spectacle of drama worthy of an Oscar. Number 10, all desperate, turned to number 3 and whispered that they needed to run away from that horrible scene, but the other was so alienated that she questioned the reason for the escape, officially being the voice of obedience. Minori's attempt to unite the clones in a revolution of freedom was a fiasco. They were only there to get rid of bodies, without understanding what was really happening, and they even thought that being slaves was an ideal way of life. Hearing those clones, treating themselves as if they were disposable objects, left the protagonist with a rage that would disgust any human being. Minori, thinking herself the heroine of the story, assured that she knew herself better than anyone, and that for the misfortune of the clones, she would save them. Number 3, confused, asked to be released, but the heroine did not release her, and reaffirmed the existence of their own will. But in the end, her speech sounded more like an audience at school than a fight for freedom. And with that, suddenly, Ishiki Seiya pulled a Bruce Lee move and opened the door with a kick, cutting the revolution mood. He looked at them and said that he had not given permission for the girl to speak. Yay! Soon he began to distribute slaps as if it were carnival. He concluded that number 10 was nothing more than a defect, and needed to be eliminated like a bug in the system. And when Minori saw that, all the memories of torture at the Byakuran base returned, bringing more drama than a horror movie. Seiya, all excited, unsheathed the sword, noticing the furious look of the girl, and suddenly, a clone had the audacity to shout for the master to stop. Obviously, he would not take that well and struck number 3 with a punch, looking like a video game boss. But tired of the whole situation, he decided to end it once and for all. When he brandished the blade toward the third, the original Minori, in an act of heroism, placed herself in front. Seiya, completely caught by surprise with her reaction, was paralyzed, but right after that, the presence of blood awakened the memories of the past. Then, in a moment of twist, he realized that that was the real Kiryu Minori. And the protagonist remained with ears attentive in his magic. After the true identity was discovered, Shin unleashed his heroic rescue mission. He accelerated his movement and invaded Ishiki's mansion, like a superhero in a movie, and the alarm sounded as if it were the opening of a nightclub. The villain realized that Minori's brother was coming to rescue the girl, and here came the threat. Shin would face a true apocalypse with the armed clones around him. They were all trained combat clones, and curiously, they had the same appearance as his sister. The villain was enjoying seeing how far the hero could go, while Shin bravely dodged all the attacks. The clones tried to attack him with spears, but he moved like a fleeing cat. But in the middle of the action, a surprise attack left his arm decapitated, as if it were a movie scene. Surprisingly, clone number 10 appeared like a heroine, pushing away the attacking clone. And at that moment, the other clone asked what was happening, and she, quite fearless, said that Shin was the original older brother of all of them. The warrior, with disdain, declared that she did not care, because the master's order was to eliminate all invaders. But, by protecting an invader, number 10 also became a target, and was now in everyone's sights. The clones prepared to finish the disobedient one, but at that moment, Shin rose again and grabbed his mask. When he placed it on his face, the atmosphere around him began to vibrate with a powerful energy, and he told number 10 to step aside and let him handle everything. Meanwhile, Seiya, in the mansion, ran the knife across Minori's face, delighting in her screams. And at the peak of the emotion, he punched her, throwing her far away while expressing his gratitude to the clones who eliminated Chikara and Taru, just because he was losing patience. Seiya, all provocative, questions the reason for Minori's return after having escaped from his claws, asking if she came to be his again. And as if that were not enough, he sends a kick to her face, with a hatred that only increased by the way he treated her. Minori stands up, grabs a dagger and declares that she will never forgive him. Seiya, being the sarcastic one he is, mocks by asking if she wants revenge for all those years of torture, remembering that she even changed routes to try to save the clones. To illustrate his idea, he grabs clone number 3 and in a brutal act, decapitates it in front of Minori, who screams in despair. She tries to strike him with the dagger, but for him, who is a top swordsman, it is like trying to scratch a wall. To reinforce his point of view and show who is in charge, Seiya uses his sacred blue sword and rips off Minori's arms, throwing her far away. He insists that the clones have no life, and that for him, they are only objects that he pushes until they break. It does not stop there. Right after that, he eliminates another clone, while the heroine tries to save what remained, and looks at him with an overflowing hatred, which is exactly the energy Seiya was seeking, because her despair was a celebration. In the attempt to protect another clone that was in danger, Minori places herself in front, and in an action scene worthy of a movie, Seiya attacks again, cutting her arms once more. She, in despair, casts a spell and shouts for him not to move. But the villain, with the air of someone who is having fun, reveals that the girl did not understand the situation. The clones she tries to protect are nothing more than disposable and useless dolls, and with a mocking smile, he observes her despair, saying that she needs to be more persistent. After that, he orders Minori to kneel, but upon finding refusal in her eyes, he drives his sword into the stomach of another clone, questioning if she really does not want to save them. Fury takes over, and he roars for her to obey, promising to continue eliminating her relatives if she does not kneel. Reluctant, but without alternative, the girl falls to her knees and begs him to stop. After eliminating another clone, he provokes, asking if that is the only thing she can ask. With her forehead on the ground, she begs him to cease all that torture. He, like the classic villain he is, says that maybe he can reconsider if she takes the place of the dolls, and the audience is in shock when he points the sword, demanding that she lick his boots, stating that she did not have the courage to refuse. In an act of brutality, he injures her lightly and declares that, before him, she can only respond with a "yes, sir." Intimidated, Minori surrenders and confirms. But the festivity does not end there, because he opens a door, keeping his sword always close to her, and in a cruel movement, he tears out her tongue with a single motion. The scene becomes even more grotesque when he picks up the cut tongue, places it in his mouth and bites it, commenting on how juicy it was. Next, he grabs her neck, stating that she will not escape, and begins to tear her clothes, pointing the sword again to her neck, demanding more of that expression of panic, telling her to fight, resist, and in the end, surrender to him. When everything seemed doomed to a climax of humiliation, a brutally delivered punch hits Seiya, paralyzing him. This fierce blow came from our hero, Shin. As soon as he strikes the villain, he runs hurriedly toward his sister to check how she was. Her look, which expressed the certainty that her brother would come, mixed relief and gratitude. Meanwhile, Ishiki, irritated, gets up and questions what Seiya did with the clones in the mansion. Shin promptly responds that he would never eliminate the clones, because they were made from his sister. He admits that it was difficult, but at least he managed to leave them incapacitated. But Seiya, always sarcastic, thinks the hero's attitude is a nuisance, and suggests that he would have had more fun if he had captured the clones, brutalizing them in front of Shin. The protagonist replies that the most interesting part of the story would be crushing him 1,000,000 times, and not to waste time, he launches another attack, but Seiya, agile, dodges with his sword, hitting only the surface of the villain. At this frantic pace, Seiya began to better understand how that guy neutralized the clones with such powerful strength. Right after that, he throws Shin far away and activates a powerful technique, a sword imbued with lightning magic that tears off one of the hero's limbs. However, the scene gains a twist when the severed arm becomes wrapped in mind control magic and flies toward Ishiki. The impact of the blow hitting the villain is devastating, destroying the area around him. Arriving at the hall, Seiya gives the order for the clones to serve as a shield for him. Shin thinks it is ridiculous for him to protect himself with the same dolls he used so much, but Seiya retorts, stating that it did not matter how he used them, because they were his. Ending the conversation, he gives the command and the girls go after Shin. He, in turn, deals with the attacks, seeing the form of his original sister in each of them, something that only increases his fury. When Minori tries to warn him of an attack, she is struck from behind. The distraction caused by his sister being attacked makes Shin lose focus, and desperate, he shouts for them to let her go, while his eyes are fixed on his sister under attack. And at the height of the confusion, a heavy blow strikes his back, delivered by Ishiki Seiya. Exultant, the villain exclaims that Shin should have protected his younger sister. Our protagonist is there apologizing for having caused a true drama for his sister and for the clones, who also ended up taking heavy hits. But clone number 3 already comes saying, "That's what I'm useful for, so relax." But Ishiki, the big villain, cuts it off and says that her only function is to follow his orders. The situation catches fire when he, furious with Shin's look, begins to deliver punches, but the protagonist is quick and dodges the attacks. When he reaches a very high place, Seiya makes a delicious threat, promising to eliminate one of Minori's clones. And the moment he moves to attack, Shin throws himself in front and takes the blow, getting badly hurt. Seiya, all excited, asks if he will not respond to the attacks, and if not, he will torture his sister instead. And then, my friend, he releases a devastating blow with his sword, shattering poor Shin. There on the ground, injured and completely broken, Seiya makes a point of warning that the protagonist will have to watch everything that will happen to his sister. But since the story does not end, Shin quickly stands up again, because regeneration is the guy's strength. Ishiki, dissatisfied, curses him, calling him a useless undead. But Shin's courage speaks louder, and he places himself in front of the clones. The girls, without understanding much, ask why he protects them, and he replies that he does it because he loves his sister. Guess what Seiya does? He says that those there are nothing more than dolls made by Bakurin's technology and are not his real sister. He begins to shout orders, but the clones are realizing the trap and do not even care. And so the realization begins to fall into place. They begin to understand why Shin is so crazy about defending them. They turn toward the villain, dismayed by the conflict that is happening, and together begin to corner Ishiki, while he enters into despair. Now that they have realized that they are clones of Kiryu Minori, and have a deep connection with the original, the memories that the real Minori lived begin to come to the surface, revealing how Shin always tried to protect all of them. This is the point where Shin realizes that his physical manipulation ability allows not only controlling his own energy, but also the parts that were separated. Meanwhile, Minori, without realizing it, shares her experiences with the clones who, like her, have the same genes. Out of control, Seiya shouts for the dolls to obey. But look at that, whoever messes with their brother will end up badly. Ishiki then makes threats that he will crush everyone, but Shin does not let it pass and moves forward again, delivering a powerful punch to the villain. He ends up on the ground, but soon a clone of Minori appears with a spear in hand, willing to take a part of him as well. Defeated, Seiya, annoyed, is confronted by Shin who, full of courage, asks how he should get rid of the villain once and for all. The original Minori wants to do it personally, because she wants nothing less than revenge in her own hands. While the clones hold Ishiki, he begs for mercy, but the daughters of the crime are connected to his cruel origin and do not stop. Minori, extremely angry, summons a giant hammer and begins to strike him, but only one blow will not be enough to satisfy her rage. Kiryu Minori is determined to tear him apart before his voice goes completely silent. Clone number 10 interrupts the moment to report that everyone endured unimaginable pain, and that dozens of them were also slain by Seiya. She demands that he experience the same, wishing to see Ishiki suffer even further. Shin understands the pain and the mistreatment they went through while being eliminated over and over again. It was a true hell on Earth. It is revealed that in the mansion's basement, a creature from the dungeons is kept alive and drugged to assault any living being, including men, as happened to a hunter who opposed Seiya. Everyone agrees to use this cruel method for their final revenge. Together, Minori and Shin take clone number 10 to the basement, where they chain the villain, and a true spectacle of pure terror begins to form when Ishiki sees the cell open. Then the creature appears, an Emperor Oak, before the false hero, who goes mad with fear. They say that a specimen of this species could form an entire country. Before it only attacked women, but now because of the drugs and the experiments of Bakurin, it started giving no mercy to anyone. Minori, horrified, and Shin turning his gaze away, watch the scene, which ends with a closing of curtains for the terror that unfolded. The two siblings are exhausted, and the only thing they desire is an end to this marathon. However, the clones, full of gratitude, offer to prepare a little tea and thank Shin, who did not exterminate any of them in the battle. Number 10, full of emotions, thanks deeply, but without knowing how to repay the brother, he asks everyone to follow him through the mansion, since he needs supplies and information about the Bakuran Guild. Meanwhile, number 3 stays there, until the day the torture ends. In the middle of the conversation, the girl, insecure, confesses that she does not know what to do with the future. After all, raised in captivity, she fears not being accepted in the world. Shin, always supportive, tries to comfort her, and ends up saying that this is nonsense, because he himself accepts all of them as they are. He assures that they do not need to find a meaning immediately in existence, they just need to live. Number 3, all excited, commits to living life the best way she can, but like in a horror movie, out of nowhere, she is decapitated with a clean and deadly cut. That is right, and who appears behind her? Kira Haruto, who had disappeared, and now finds our hero after so long. To reach where he is, that Byakuran eliminated all the clones, just to arrive at that tragic scene. With a malicious smile, he looks at Shin and says that he is happy with this emotional reunion, but that he still has to eliminate everyone who is there, and he already attacks right away. A precise strike with the sword, and boom, Shin's hands go flying. Kira throws that provocation, saying that the guy did not react in time, and while the protagonist begins to regenerate the limbs, he advances with a blow full of magic, but he missed. The villain, super agile, calmly dodges, saying that Shin is slower than he imagined. The guy tries several times to land a punch, but all the attacks go wide. Kira, laughing inside, says that all of this is useless, and begins to prepare a spell that sends real destruction into the mansion, hitting our hero's arms. Makoto, watching the situation, says that Kira is a monster, and then he just mocks, finding the reaction of an immortal funny. With one arm destroyed, Shin hurries to activate the regeneration, but where is it? The ability is not working. Kira reveals with a satisfied smile that a spell on his sword blocked Shin's regeneration. The fear stretches inside our hero, who already feels that Kira is not just anyone, and now he only wants to make sure his sister escapes. In truth, he does not even care if he will leave there standing. Then he asks how the villain discovered his location. Kira tells that Ishiki's report had stopped, and by chance he went to check the situation and ran into Makoto. A real bad luck for our protagonist. Then Kira begins to get curious. Who else is in the mansion? Because counting, the protagonist used a word in the plural, throwing hints of what is still to come. He even knows that Shin's sister is there, but he does not care at all about avenging his fallen comrades. In fact, he is happy about the elimination of the guild members, because that way Shin and the others leveled up after facing the rank S. Result: if Kira eliminates the two, he will gain many levels. The protagonist thinks the villain is completely crazy, and although he partly agrees, Kira does not care at all. In the blink of an eye, the guy disappears and appears stabbing the sword into Shin's stomach. The blow makes the protagonist collapse, but Kira does not care, happy and light for obtaining so many levels. And Shin, not even dreaming of giving up, he invokes a spell and traps Kira's feet, promising that he will still eliminate him. But Kira, from the height of his ego, repels Shin and throws him far away, laughing while saying that he will not be defeated. At his current level, the protagonist does not even get close to him and only takes beating after beating, losing vitality with every punch. His regeneration is not keeping up with Kira's absolute power. The villain launches a proposal. If the protagonist surrenders, he will leave his sister alone. If not, he takes both of them. Deadly silence. In panic, Shin kneels and begs him to take only him, giving his life for his sister. Kira laughs, mocking the protagonist's lack of dignity, but actually, he is just waiting for the right moment, because he intends to send both of them to the ground at once. Then, full of rage, Shin tries a punch, but Kira simply dodges. And at that moment, look at that, all the remaining clones in the original Minori appear to protect Shin. Kira, observing, gives a little laugh, realizing that Shin treated them very well and that there are still some left. When Minori appears, the protagonist shouts for them to stop because, let's be honest, they are not exactly a match for Kira. The clones begin to fall one by one, but they do not care at all, aware that, even if they do not win, they will be buying time for the siblings' escape. And as Kira approaches Shin, the clones continue sacrificing themselves for him, thanking him for what he did for them. One of the clones, with a teleportation spell, manages to take the two siblings away from there, safe but not without Kira noticing how much mana this spell demands. Seeing the caster spreading across the floor, he already begins to worry, but he knows that even with all the clones attacking, the chance of victory is null. Suddenly, a clone tears her shirt and activates a magical biological bomb, releasing her soul energy condensed in a crystal in her chest. With their last strength, they thank Shin and Minori before detonating themselves, exploding the entire mansion with overwhelming force. Sagiria reigned as the goddess of beauty in the Byakuran Guild. With irresistible charm, a sweet little way, and an attitude that left everyone in the clouds, there was no one who did not fall in love with her. But the poor souls who ended up alone with her. These soon discovered the macabre secret she hid. Like that unfortunate man who caught her washing herself in a vital fluid and saw what really existed behind that facade. 6 months ago, the young woman went down to the secret bunker in the guild, the place that not even in the worst nightmares would be welcome. Upon opening the door of the room where the poor brothers were imprisoned, she checked the amount of vital fluid already collected, and realizing that she was only halfway there, she decided to accelerate the process. When the machine stopped without thinking twice, she went there and turned it on again. The brothers, vulnerable, could only watch a gigantic fan appear beneath them. The blades began to spin as if they were drill blades, and in a moment of total panic, they were slowly ground. Seiya, the sadistic mage, enjoyed that scene a lot. And be careful, that technique would not show the expected results to level up, but who cared? What really mattered was the tomato sauce, which she loved to delight in. She thought that the immortals would look like zombies, but upon seeing their soft and shining skin, her perception changed. Even under torture, their skin regenerated, always smooth like that of a newborn. For Sagiri, this was the dream of consumption, eternal youth. With immortal beauty and freshness that never withers, she could attract men and money, and the effort, unnecessary. She felt a deep envy of the brothers, who were born with that power. With a sip of their blood, she could ensure that her beauty would last forever, becoming the true queen of the universe. Kira, the guild leader, watched the scene with a satisfied smile. In the present, when he arrived at the place, he realized that there were no more signs of the brothers. The first doubt that arose was whether they had managed to escape. Kira decided to call Ya, seeking a little comfort, but the response he received was fury. She became enraged and questioned where the brothers were, and why he had not captured them yet. Strange, right? Kira then explained that they eliminated Seiya and once again escaped. But Ya was not interested at all. For her, the only thing that mattered was that he caught them quickly. Kira did not understand all this hurry. After all, they had plenty of blood stored. Ya, however, emphasized that fresh blood was essential to maintain her beauty and youth. Kira, indifferent to her vanity, complained that she was shouting too much. And Paf, she did not like the provocation at all, and already with fire in her eyes, decided that she would go after them personally. Meanwhile, in some corner, Haruto woke up confused and asked where he was. Minori, full of hope, said that the clones had blown up the entrance and that they had ended up in a dungeon. Frightened, the protagonist worried about the rest, but the expression of sadness on Minori's face made him dive into the memories that he could not save them, breaking the promise he made. Feeling her lament, he received a tight hug, which seemed to say that everyone understood his struggle. Haruto was unhappy for not having saved everyone, but he felt that he needed to remedy his mistakes. The feelings of the clones intertwined with his, making him understand that deep down, everyone chose not to run away. With tears in her eyes, Minori revealed that she received their last message, encouraging him to move forward. He was moved, but deeply reinforced his desire to strengthen himself. The sister who shared that commitment squeezed his hand and reaffirmed that together they would become stronger. During his unconsciousness, Byakuran made an announcement about them that at first Minori thought was tragic information. However, it was an even greater catastrophe. The reward for the head of each of them had jumped to 5 billion. Hunters from everywhere were after them now. Desperate, they knew that they needed to leave the dungeon immediately, because the traces left through the teleportation points could lead their pursuers to them. They followed a labyrinthine path until they found a light at the end, an exit. But Haruto stood between Minori and freedom, shouting for her not to advance. Before they could breathe, a monstrous eye appeared, taking the entire opening. And then the truth was revealed, a colossal, terrifying dragon. And there was Minori, shouting to her brother that they should run back to the dungeon. But he had different plans. And then, things got ugly. The dragon released a blast of fire that threw the two siblings far away as if they were feathers. After giving a spin in the air, the creature began to fly, and the realization fell it was a monster worthy of respect. One of those beasts that should not even be seen outside the dungeon. Why the hell was it there? No one knew, but one thing was certain. Whether they had courage or not, they had no chance against that beast. The siblings tried to dodge the hot flames, clinging to the hope that a nearby city could be their safe harbor. But, to their despair, the dragon decided to have fun and released a blast of fire that destroyed part of the city as if it were paper. The temperature? Extremely high. Burns of 3,000 taptas, more than enough to melt anything in the path. And those scales? Not even think. They were so hard that even cannon shots ricocheted, making the dragon practically unbeatable. Only a team of powerful guilds could face this thing and come out unharmed. Before that monstrosity, what could the siblings do? Shun had a clearly bold idea, while Minori thought he had his head in the clouds, but the hero of the story had his reasons. He proclaimed that they would defeat the dragon and gain more power in return. He reminded Minori that, if they left now, they would never have a chance against Kira. Then, like a master of improvisation, Shun launched himself to the left, while Minori went to the right, the two circling the dragon. The beast released more fire, but our protagonist did not hesitate and searched for a small opening to attack. He put on the mask, activated a spell and charged at the beast. Shun shot upward, and the battle took an aerial turn, a balanced duel. A dragon, like any respectable creature, has weak points, and Shun aimed right at the head. He delivered a powerful punch that made the beast stagger. His fist became smeared with that monstrous slime, and the pain was intense, since the scales were hard like stone. Meanwhile, Minori realized that she would need to be strategic and aim at the gaps between the scales. She advanced and drove the dagger into the fissures, but the dragon barely moved, sending a powerful tail to knock her down. After dispatching Minori, the dragon turned to Shun and once again prepared the fire breath. The impact was brutal, but Shun's sister arrived to defend him. Ignoring the attack, the creature used a red blast of the Makub type that Minori tried to block with a spell. But the magical shield was not enough, and she was hit by the fire, which left her hand raw. The black flames, devourers of magic, were causing destruction. Feeling the sharp pain, she decided to use the memory of the clones who had died as motivation. Determined to become stronger, she decided that instead of letting herself be carried by the pain, she would tear off her own arm to stop it. With the pain consuming her, she faced the dragon, while her brother stood up shouting that the fight was not over yet. This was the first time Shun saw his bones melting. He already expected something from a dragon's breath, but now recovered, he decided to tear off his own hand and place magic in it, throwing the part against the monster. The attack, now wrapped in a spell, hit the beast, which for the first time showed clear signs of pain. Taking advantage of the opening, Shun shouted for Minori to act, and she activated an infernal black flame magic with everything she had. The dragon screamed in pain and began to falter. Then Shun appeared before the creature and fused his severed limbs into a single weapon, channeling all the strength into a single point. The blow pierced the dragon's hard scales, and then he delivered a powerful strike to the monster's head. The impact threw the beast against the ground, ending the battle and allowing the protagonist to level up with this epic victory. The siblings, relieved, celebrated the fall of the beast, but in the middle of the euphoria, Minori realized that her abilities had awakened after that hell of flames. And while they recovered, they began to question why a dragon was in that place, since they had not seen it before in the area. Shin had an insight. Something or someone was controlling the beast, due to the purple glow that shone in its eyes. The same glow that they had known in the tortures before. And as soon as Shin whispered her name, more dragons began to fly over the island. And on top of one of them, there were two well-dressed figures, armed to the teeth with swords. They jumped down, and Shin suspected that they were also under control, because they soon charged toward him and Minori. One of them threw his sword at the girl, who skillfully dodged by rolling across the ground. Indignant, Shin swung his arm in a punch, throwing the attacker far away. But the show was only beginning, because a colossal dragon appeared, preparing another fire assault. At the moment the attack was unleashed, everything around turned to ashes, and the protagonist realized that the explosion was far more devastating than that of the previous dragons. This, my friends, means that they had already been located and the number of enemies only increased. Shin, with a determined look, announced that he would take care of the dragon, and asked Minori to deal with the hunters, who clearly were under some kind of hypnotic control. Looking at the strength of the opponents, he realized that he had almost put his sister in danger and quickly suggested that she move away. But Minori, not wanting to stand with her arms crossed, remembered the events in the mansion when they faced Seiya and had an idea. She could no longer stay just watching her brother risk himself. After all, this was their revenge. Together they attacked the hunters, casting spells with all their energy. Minori, with her fire magic, knocked down 3 enemies at once, showing that unity makes strength. But meanwhile, the dragon, about to launch its ice breath, attacked Shin, who received the impact directly, taking massive damage. Dismembered on one side, Shin used his body manipulation ability to attack with the severed limbs. However, the beast was faster, biting his legs and interrupting the attack. But Shin was not there to give up easily. He injected poison into the creature, making it feel absurd pain and finally fall defeated, guaranteeing many levels for our hero. Meanwhile, the hunters gave no rest to Minori, who dodged all the attacks like a ninja, but with more enemies appearing, she had to create a magical shield to protect herself, until she received a stab in the back. With many targets around her, she decided that she could no longer hold the flames back. Using her black fire magic, she launched a devastating attack that hit several opponents at once. She shouted to her brother, it was time to end that quickly before the damage became irreversible, and even with the black flames burning the hunters, they stood up as if nothing was happening, controlled by the hypnotic magic that forced them to follow orders. Suddenly, all the monsters and hunters who were under control began to retreat and line up, as if they were waiting for Sagiri-A to emerge from a portal. The siblings noticed that Kira does not appear there. Sagiri, with an arrogance almost palpable, believed she was strong enough to face the two alone. She confesses that she shares the senses with the hypnotized, and that was how she found the twins on that island. The brother fired back, making it clear that she was thinking too highly of herself for coming to them without Kira. Sagiri retorted, stating that she did not need an ally to face 2 opponents she considered weak. With hot blood, Minori summoned her black flames and proclaimed that the sovereignty of pride always leads to downfall. She hurled her magic, but the mage, with an easy gesture, completely dissipated the spell, coming out unharmed. Frustration filled the air. Minori, in tears, lamented the lack of value that Seiya gave to human life. When one of the hunters fell, Sagiri coldly said that human life meant nothing to her, only her beauty and strength mattered. Minori disagreed, arguing that there is no hierarchy in life. But Sagiri replied, stating that both lived in illusions, and she was about to disillusion them. Then, by casting a purple lightning spell, she created a deep crater between them, devastating everything around. In this tense moment, Shin jumped to save his sister, but Seiya appeared, giving the guy a remark. He should worry more about his own skin. Sagiri used her hypnotic power and sealed a kiss on his lips. Shin's eyes began to glow purple, under the influence of Sagiri's magic, while his sister watched in terror. The mage commented that he was lucky, because he would not need to lift a finger and his youth would be preserved forever. Hatred began to grow in Minori upon seeing her brother under control, and she attacked Sagiri. With the dagger in hand, she lunged, but Shin himself stepped in front, taking the blow. Sagiri, perverse, whispered about the pain of hurting one's own brother. Minori, determined, tried to attack again, but Shin surprised her with a strong punch. She dodged and shouted, begging for him to recognize her, pleading. But Seiya had a new trump card. The hypnosis could only be broken by Minori, unless she managed to overcome it with a more powerful spell. Under Seiya's control, Shin was ordered to attack Minori, and began throwing punches without mercy. After a kick that pushed Minori away, Shin advanced, preparing for a devastating punch. Seiya knew that Minori felt terrible for having been surpassed by her brother, who was much stronger. With the dagger in hand, Minori decided to strike back so she would not be eliminated. While looking at her brother, she remembered moments when he treated her with affection. These memories distracted her, resulting in a severe blow. The fall to the ground left her without strength, thinking that she could not defeat Shin. He strangled her, lifting her from the ground, leaving her in the shadow of helplessness. Visions of protection from the past consumed her, and she remembered the promise they made, to become strong together. In the midst of this state of unconsciousness, Minori began to murmur, and when taken by hatred, she shouted that she would eliminate the witch. She ordered Shin Makoto to tear his sister apart, but it was Minori who acted first, severing Shin's limbs. While softening her brother's heart, Minori still dodged his attacks, and with an apology that sounded more like a lament, unleashed a wave of black flames, which covered an immense area of destruction. Ya, half ninja, slipped through a portal, escaping the fury of the flames. Minori even thought that if she stayed hidden behind her brother, everything would work out, but no, that tactic no longer worked. In a desperate act to secure herself, she attacked Shin coldly, tearing off his arms and in the end his head. And guess what? Even without a head, Shin did not give up and threw a punch at her, almost as if saying, "My brotherly love has no limits." What she felt in every blow, the unspoken apologies, were intense. After all, who really should ask for forgiveness was Minori, for having been so weak and only failing. But that was changing, see? Now the girl had the determination she needed to protect her brother. While the fight went on, she gained real strength and ran to give Shin a big hug. During that moment of affection, she swore that she would become stronger, and with a snap of magic, the explosion affected both of them, taking them together. After the carnage of the sacrificial attack, Seiya stayed there, lurking, trying to collect the blood of the two while the dense fog frightened her vision. Suddenly Minori's voice echoed from the smoke, revealing that Seiya did not take her seriously, thinking that the girl would not have the courage to confront Shin. And do not forget, in that scorching hell they had already tried to eliminate each other dozens of times. An immense tide of magical power emerged from her, and she, with a firmness of someone who had already decided, declared that she had made her decision long ago. Shin, grateful, said that because of her, he had finally awakened from that trance, and together, they would fight the challenges that appeared ahead. Ya, upon realizing that the explosion had broken her spell, prepared to hypnotize him again. Seiya, bolder than ever, summoned an army of hunters and dragons to attack the pair of siblings. Minori, now strong, grabbed her dagger and cut the witch from the attack. Shin managed to defeat one hunter, but was almost turned into charcoal by a dragon. At that moment, the heroine saved the day, casting a protection spell. After that, she made the monster feel the weight of her black flames. The mage, who did not get tired, resurrected the corpses again and dropped the pearl. Fighting against her was useless, because they would come back to life until their hearts stopped for good. The siblings faced the hypnotized ones, who acted like zombies from a horror movie. Even while taking a beating, one of them remained standing, even without a jaw. The sister fired that they were not being controlled by magic and asked her brother to attack without thinking. He caught the message and began to throw punches, filling his fist with magical gratitude. And in the middle of the confusion, an enraged dragon flew in his direction, with Seiya on its back, pressing our hero against the ground. Taking advantage of the atmosphere, she tried to hypnotize him again, promising that no one escaped from that. Seiya laughed, thinking that his resistance and magic were already at the end. She believed that the guy would fall into the trap easily, and shouted for him to eliminate Minori. But oh, out of nowhere, he knelt and prepared a new blow loaded with magic. "Fulfill the order at once," she shouted, and in a turn that no one expected, he delivered a powerful punch to the villain's chin. On the ground, Seiya remained in a state of shock. Her hypnosis no longer worked. The siblings were on the hard level now, and her magic no longer had power over them. With broken teeth, Seiya could not believe that she had been surpassed. She, in fury, began to cast a beam of destructive spells. Minori made a shield and neutralized all the attacks, declaring that the two were immortal. Seiya, enraged, conjured even more spells, launching a rain of meteors of all elements against the siblings. But guess what? Nothing worked. Karu Minori managed to resist, and then activated the Black Line spell. Even with the witch's shield, the black magic flames were breaking her previous defense. She was shocked when she realized that her magic was draining away. The spell hit Seiya, burning her skin and making her scream in pain, a true hammer blow that made Minori remember the suffering she had already gone through. Now the younger sister wanted Seiya to feel the same, and for that she used her own spell against her, condemning her to an eternal nightmare. And so after a while, Seiya woke up, tied up, exactly in the same capsule where the two sisters had gone through a rough time. Upon recognizing the scenario, she panicked, screaming desperately to be taken out of there. Even while trapped, she leaned forward to demand the treasure, while trying to conjure a lightning spell, a meteor spell, a water spell, a cutting wind spell, and all the others that were in her repertoire. The witch was in a true dilemma, questioning why on earth her spells simply refused to work. Then she spotted the protagonist and dramatically called his attention, asking if he was paying attention. Upon catching him chilling with the computer, she fell into despair, inquiring what he would be planning to do. And would you believe that the boy clicked a red button? Below that button, a propeller seemed to come to life, sucking the witch into it. In the blink of an eye, she began to be torn apart, screaming in agony as if the pain consumed her. The limbs were ripped from her body, until suddenly, she woke up with the feeling that everything was nothing more than a nightmare. However, when she looked around, she realized that everything there was very real and painful. Yahello began to beg for her life, while the protagonist used a scoreboard that showed a frightening number. Everything clicked and she understood. That was the total number of times that the siblings had already been torn apart by the same torture. The chill in her stomach increased when she realized that she would have to face exactly the same fate multiple times, and then the protagonist pressed the button again, leading the witch to a piercing scream of pain. Finally, she woke up again, realizing that she had experienced the same torture that the siblings had. Seiya thought that now, finally, she could return to the real world, free from the unbearable pain. And plans to eliminate the siblings were already in her head, thinking that as soon as she returned, she would deal with them. But when the count dropped to 0, she plunged into despair, thinking that everything had ended, but that was not quite what happened. The button was pressed once again, and her screams echoed again. Not even she believed that she would have to endure this torture again. Meanwhile, the siblings noticed that the witch's body was beginning to go through changes, becoming dry and wrinkled. What they saw was the true form of Sagiri. Soon the realization hit. The old woman was using magic to maintain a young appearance, when in fact she had already surpassed 100 years. The protagonist explained that she had already lived about 150 long years. When the tribe of the immortals learned of her existence, she realized that by ingesting her vital fluid, she could prolong her youth indefinitely. And then the obsession with eternal youth led her to cling to the siblings and to the insane search for that power. Even after having gone through the tortures that she provided, she still desperately wanted to live. Shin, her brother, was convinced that if they left her there, the witch would end up dying of old age. However, the hero decided not to finish the witch and began to move away. until the sister spotted a shine in the distance. She found a medallion which she realized was the artifact that the witch used to hypnotize parents and children. Determined, the sister decided that she needed to end that cycle of suffering quickly. The witch, without knowing whether hours or days had passed, was aware that her time was coming. Suddenly, Haruto arrived, sensing her presence, and found her about to expire. Desperate, Seiya begged him to kill her before it was too late. But Kira, without mercy or pity, refused her last wish and left, condemning her to suffer. Thus, she would rot slowly, seeing her appearance deteriorate, revealing the real age she carried. Far from there, Kira felt the siblings approaching and made a promise that he would not let them escape. Meanwhile, the siblings decided to take a break and light a campfire in the forest. The two talked about how much they had already progressed in their mission of revenge. Many things had happened until they reached that point. With each fight, they grew stronger. However, they had also taken the lives of innocent people, a burden that Minori carried. The time to end everything was approaching. The final step would be to eliminate Kira Haruto, their greatest enemy. After that, their revenge would be complete. They decided that they needed to rest before moving forward. Suddenly, Shin heard a noise and shouted for his sister to run. The two jumped to the side, avoiding an explosive blow that almost eliminated them. Haruto smiled, satisfied for finally having found them. With the sword in hand, he declared that he had finally found them. The siblings tried to flee, thinking that in numbers they would have the advantage, but Shin was not so sure. He knew that they were exhausted from the fight against Seiya, and that if they did not escape, they would be captured. But before they could think of something, Kira advanced with a precise strike. The protagonist confronted the troublemaker, stating that he was the last person he wanted to see. Haruto became irritated with the response, and immediately retorted that they had a long history between them. He said that he originally intended only to play with the little sister, but things changed, and now he was going to erase the younger sister from memory. Haruto's sword comes to life, transforms into a monstrous entity with eyes, and expands in size. The guy was so damn angry because the little sister had escaped from Seiya's mansion that he decided it was time to eliminate the pest. With a look that was almost spitting fire, Kira said that for having been irritated by her, he would erase the sister's existence. And of course, our young hero Shin Makoto did not stand still. He rushed with everything, the rage vibrating in his veins. He threw a punch, but Haruto, as if he were in a children's game, dodges effortlessly and still takes the opportunity to protect himself when Minori attacks with a gleaming dagger. Kira defends both attacks, but Shin's fighting spirit does not let itself be shaken, and he attacks again. He realizes that this combination of forces seems to work against the villain. Minori then imbues her dagger with powerful magic and attacks with full force. When Kira tries to dodge, the protagonist appears like a shadow ninja, delivering a powerful punch. Kira dodges once again, but the pressure increases, and he decides to release a serious spell. The sword shines with energy, showing that he is also a considerable danger. Shin speeds up to escape the wave of attacks from the blade, but ends up losing an arm. Desperation takes hold of him as he tries to regenerate it, but things do not go as expected. The regeneration power is not working, and the pain is brutal. To make matters worse, his body simply does not respond. While Minori runs to give him support, she is hit from behind and is caught hard by a kick that throws her far away, breaking trees along her trajectory. Kira, completely satisfied, reveals that he is carrying a sword that is the true souvenir of the immortals. The wounds it causes never regenerate. Unlike all the toys he used before, this sword could truly finish them. And then, while Shin falls into despair and screams, Kira is there, calm, raising his sword to deliver the mercy strike. The attack hits its target and a jet of blood explodes. Kira settles into his illusory victory but does not realize that he also killed Minori, who threw herself in front of her brother to protect him. In an instant, her body is devastated, and Shin is lost in shock. He begins to cry, holding what remained of his sister in his arms. In the middle of the pain, her last words are his name. Desperate, he tries to cast a spell to save her, but nothing happens. The anguish is monumental as he screams, unable to accept that this is the end. Her last words are an "I love you," and Kira finishes her once and for all. This outcome leaves Makoto motionless. Haruto, in turn, does not miss the chance to comment that he hates these emotional family moments. He already knew that if he tried to finish Makoto, the sister would throw herself in front, because family bonds, right? Well, those bonds are playing in Haruto's favor. While Makoto stares at his sister's head, separated from the body, he can barely release tears. A distant memory arises in his mind, from the time when they were free. He sees her preparing food, and the two together, happy. Minori was hanging clothes on the clothesline, stating that it would be a great day. He would say that it was time for them to go to school, and of course they would go together. She had mentioned that Yosha had invited her to the aquarium, something that Makoto found strange, since she hated aquariums. In truth, she changed her mind because she did not spend a lot of time with her own brother. He, in the rush of work, invited Minori so that they would go to the aquarium, and she accepted the proposal. Promise made. Memory shifts. While passing through the village, they encountered Haruto Kira. He inquired whether they were Kiryu Makoto and Kiryu Minori. Startled, they acknowledged it. Haruto explained that he had been searching for them for a long time and had finally located them. Right afterward, he unsheathed his sword and declared that he had come for them because of their bodies. With a single blow, he split Makoto in two, right before his sister's eyes. The girl broke down in anguished sobs, but moments later, her brother's body restored itself. Haruto considered the regenerative ability remarkable. Makoto himself was unaware that he possessed such a power. This verified what his source had informed him. They were immortal. Then, there they went. Then the guy went there and went all out, decapitating both of them at once. He was startled when he realized that the guys kept regenerating without stopping. How so? The guy had never seen beings of this type, almost like a living legend, immortals, descendants of an unknown lineage. The siblings, poor things, had no idea where they had come from. Haruto, on the other hand, was not there to play, attacked again, crushing their heads with his feet, and from that moment on they became only food. The torture began, without pity or forgiveness. He eliminated the guys hundreds of times with his sword. And now, between us, Makoto was in mourning, in tears, seeing his sister being exterminated once and for all. He went from 0 to 100 in fury, screaming as if the world were going to end. A red energy exploded from him, creating a dark aura that frightened even Haruto, who did not know what to do with that monstrous creature that was before him. And Makoto, the guy, turned into a bestial figure with horns and rushed forward, roaring and accumulating magical power as if there were no tomorrow. It was so much power that it shook the ground and threw Haruto far away. But he did not stop there. He used a spell to bring his sister back to life, and guess what? Her body became perfect. Haruto was in shock, unable to believe that the sword he used to eliminate her had really not worked. What power was that, and what kind of transformation was that? The guy was stunned by Makoto's evolutionary capacity. He wondered how that was possible, but now his focus was the brother, Kiryu Makoto. He would finish him this time. Kira rushed forward, very confident, but at the moment of the charge, Makoto disappeared together with his sister and reappeared behind him. With surprising lightness, he placed Minori on the ground. Haruto kept wondering if suddenly Makoto had learned how to fight. In his new form, he attacked with claws, trying to tear his rival apart. Kira dodged, and soon they began an intense battle of strength and speed, like a game of cat and mouse. Haruto could not believe that someone had reached such a level of power with the death of his sister, while he had only achieved that after exterminating Makoto millions of times. So, there was Makoto, screaming like a madman, rushing forward again. Kira did not want to accept that he was being surpassed. Another clash of forces happened, but neither of them could land the decisive blow. It happened that suddenly, Makoto launched Kira far away, making him feel pain for the first time in a long time. He recognized that Kiryu was the first person to truly hurt him in a bold way, but of course, he knew that he had no chance of defeating that guy. Haruto turned his face to that monster that Makoto had become and released a sarcastic smile, while he, in turn, barely reacted to the insults. Both then took a deep breath and set off again into a cycle of attacks and dodges. Makoto concentrated, launched a black lightning spell against Kira. Haruto dodged, but his fury only increased with the situation. He used the sword in an attempt to eliminate his opponent once and for all. And look at that, Makoto ended up taking a cut on the shoulder. The blow almost split the guy in half, but Haruto wanted to make sure that Kira would not escape from that. He jumped high, aiming a deadly thrust, but Makoto was already standing again, raising a magical barrier as if it were nothing. The effect? It stopped the attack and still had strength to attack Kira, throwing him to the ground with magical energy. Meanwhile, with Haruto falling, Makoto walked slowly in his direction. Kira could not believe that he was about to meet the end, and did not want to accept that. And well, it was not simple at all for Minori, who had awakened even after that sword blow that eliminated her. She saw her brother step back in fear, when Haruto, who now had a semi-demonic form, also awakened, leaving her stunned. What was happening? And why did that monstrous being look like her brother? Haruto, in his true form, shouted that he never wanted to show that to anyone. Then wings began to sprout from his back and he declared that the immortal tribe would pay a high price for those acts. Then, full of hatred, he advanced for a brutal attack as if he were fighting against a titan, releasing an immense amount of energy. The two now were in a celestial battle, and the intensity was mind-blowing. Kira was perplexed, attacking with a demonic expression on his face, trying to use his sword to finish the protagonist. But surprisingly, Makoto held the blade with his own hands and began to accumulate a magical blast that fired from his mouth. And the clash began. Haruto received the attack directly, flying and spreading pain throughout his body. But of course the guy is stubborn. He managed to recover and delivered a sword strike, making the protagonist collapse on the ground. To not lose the habit, he attacked once more, and Makoto went into the air again. But then our hero rose again, screaming like a true beast mode, attacking with everything. And in a very intense scene, he rushed forward, biting the neck of the chief of the Bioacaran. The big creature felt the pain like never before, but meanwhile, Haruto was not playing around. He took advantage of the distraction and cut off the head of Kiryu Makoto. He thought that with a strike like that, the immortal would surrender, right? He then provoked, was the immortal finally tasting death? But what he did not expect was that right at the moment of the mockery, a magical circle appeared around Makoto's body. The head reconnected to his neck quickly, and Haruto immediately realized it was a return-to-time magic. The guy was in shock, thinking how it could be possible that the immortal had used that technique 1,000 times before. Kira, not wanting to fall behind, unsheathed his sword and delivered a strike that had done the same to the Demon King. But Makoto, without fear, conjured a spell and imbued his own sword with a purple energy. The two were in a fierce dispute, attacking as if each one wanted to erase the other's existence. Kira thought he had the advantage when his sword cut the overwhelming strike of the hero, who seemed to be at the bottom of the pit. But then Minori appeared, as if she were a lightning bolt in the gray sky. She placed her hands on her brother's back and shouted, encouraging him, asking him to win. As soon as Makoto felt his sister's touch, everything changed. He thanked her and received a wave of power that increased his spirit to finally attack again. Kira became furious, raging that he had already killed them hundreds of times and that this was nothing, stating that the siblings' fate would always be destruction at his hands. But Minori, firm, replied that if their fate was to be reborn endlessly, then that fate would change. Now they would erase Kira from existence. And at that exact second, Makoto unleashed an explosion of magic that was pure destruction. The strike was like a nuclear bomb hitting Haruto directly. A few days later, after Kira's fall, the investigation into the Byakuran Guild began to bear fruit. All the crimes and schemes were finally exposed, revealing the truth to the public. The hunters commented, perplexed about how insane that group was. There, everyone understood that Kira had never been a true human. And even with the general commotion over the siblings' story, their crimes would not disappear. In the end, they were free, but now they questioned what they would do with this new beginning. Makoto and Minori found themselves debating about where to go, but their minds were somewhat empty. Then, in a flash of memory, he stood up, bringing up the aquarium promise and suggesting that they could finally go there. Minori, touched, agreed immediately. Now that they had no deadlines to fulfill, they were eager to talk about many things. All those moments when fate seemed to turn against them and they were about to be crushed, but they never gave up. And so, together, they decided to restart life from zero, as many times as necessary. This way we finish the video. Leave a like and a comment to help the channel. I will leave as a recommendation 2 videos from the channel that I am sure you will like. See you later, everyone.